I'm Heather.
And I'm Desiree.
And you're listening to
the Perpetually Overdue Podcast. Hello, friends. My name is Desiree.
And my name is Heather.
And welcome to another episode of the Perpetually Overdue Podcast. Today's episode is a fun one because it is a part 2 to a previous episode that recently went up, the All Things Books episode, but specifically Pet Peeves.
Which we have a lot of.
Exactly, which is what ended up happening. We didn't plan for there to be 2 videos, but we barely scratched the surface. We already had a full-length episode filmed, and again, we barely talked about everything we wanted to talk about. So here we are again, friends, for another episode of All Things Books. I'm so excited. It's one of my favorite topics.
Yes.
We are huge book nerds, proud readers and writers, and so this topic makes us giddy.
It does. And then you get to listen to us bitch and complain for the next hour about what we don't like about books. And hey, maybe we can do a follow-up episode to talk about the things that we really love.
That I like, yes, because again, which will probably end up in another 2-parter because that's also a subject we can go on forever on.
In other words, you're going to be getting some good book content from us. We're not book talkers, but we definitely love to talk books. We love to discuss them. We definitely have a wide range of tastes when it comes to books and what we like and what we don't like. So we'll just get right into it. Yeah. Do you want to start with the first one that is at the top of the list for you?
So let's talk about ugly book covers.
Ooh.
So here's the thing. You can tell I'm riling up.
They say don't judge a book by its cover, but
oh my gosh. Okay, but okay. Let me gather my thoughts. So much I could say because book covers definitely have evolved in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, especially the last 5 years. It's hard to.
Because just answer the question.
I know. Okay.
If a book has an ugly cover,
but
are you gonna pick it up?
But here's the thing. I have an experience where many years ago, like 10 years ago, there was an influx of a lot of free books from authors who were putting the first book in a series free. So you got to read that one to hopefully entice you, obviously, to read the rest of them because they were interconnected series. So I will never forget. It was free. It was hideous. The cover was horrible. It must have been the description because till this day, I don't know why I gave it a chance because normally I wouldn't have. All that to say, go figure, ended up being one of my favorite romance authors in that time. Because then I ended up reading the rest of her series. So it's hard because I'm like, I get it. I get not wanting us to judge your book by its cover. But it is hard not to. And it will affect whether or not I give it a chance 9 times out of 10.
I agree with you. I'm in the same boat. There was this one particular book, it was a series, and it was really, really interesting because it kind of put the abortion issue on its head a little bit. Unwind is the first book. So the protagonists in the book, their parents elected to have them unwound, and then they run away, and it's this whole thing. So it was very, very interesting. The covers. And this is why it's hard, because you don't want to judge a book by its cover. But when the covers, this looked like some college, and I don't mean senior, I mean freshman college graphic designer put together this cover. It was terrible. The series itself was highly recommended. A lot of people loved it. I loved it. I read every single book in that series. I was hooked. I will say, as a piece of advice for people, if you see a book with an ugly cover and you read the description and it kind of is giving you like a little, I think I might want to go and look at reviews because you never know. Fortunately, I read the back of the book. The premise was very interesting. I looked at reviews online. Everybody had nothing but amazing things to say about this series. They raved about it. Fantastic. Got it. No regrets. I don't know how many years later, but many, many years later, these books come out with brand new covers and they're gorgeous. Gorgeous covers. And I was so happy for this author because I just imagine how many people have not even picked up the book to read the back of it because of how the cover back then looked. And now these covers are so beautiful. Covers have really popped off. Now there's variants where they will have special edition covers. Now they have, I don't know what it's called. Do you know what it's called when they put some sort of picture on the pages? I'll just use a book as an example. So this book, right?
Yeah.
They'll put some sort of illustration here so that when you do this, you see an illustration. Love it. They'll do stuff on the inside cover. Like, it is a whole new game, especially when it comes to book covers.
If it's a hardback under the dust jacket, they'll like, ooh.
Girl.
Pretty.
Girl. Let me show you one.
Sexy.
It's so sexy. Now you have an entire industry. They'll take books, and this is apart from the publishing company, and they'll make special editions of it. So the Fourth Wing series, I got the first 2 books special edition. So the 3rd book just came out in January. So the company that did this over in the UK, they don't have the 3rd book ready to ship yet. I don't even know if it's pre-order. I have it right here. Give me 1 second.
It's the sprayed edges now. They're spraying the edges and doing some gorgeous shit.
Girl.
Look at that.
Look at this book.
Guys,
look at this.
If you're listening, I highly suggest hopping on over to YouTube because this is stunning.
This is book porn.
Yes. Look at
the
that.
inside. Okay. So.
Wow.
I want to make sure it's being seen. So I don't like reading books with the dust cover on.
No.
Just because I feel like I fuck them up.
I take them off.
A lot of the times when you take off the dust cover, the book is just sort of boring and plain. Look at this.
Oh my goodness. The gold.
Look.
The gold foiling.
And it wraps around to the other side.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
Oh.
They even have one on it's the same one as the front, but it's the details.
Yes,
it's the details that matter. So I do wonder how that works as far as them being able to release these special editions. Tubers on their channels take books that they've bought and make their own covers for them, which I think is such a great way of getting around the ugly book covers.
Yes.
Because if you want to just get the book, but you don't want that ugly ass book sitting on your bookshelf, just make a different cover or just get a book cover jacket. I'm sure Etsy or some Maker's Market website has plenty of them to better coordinate. Seeing the book talkers with their shelves all color coordinated and everything, I know that there's options out there.
Absolutely.
So now that you've had that experience with getting that book that had an ugly cover but turned out to be one of your favorite romance authors, are you now more open to picking up ugly books and giving them a chance?
I am. Like, I will always remember that. So there is always that memory that instantly perks up when I'm having one of those to a book cover. But here's the thing. I will say, I understand that a lot of authors cannot afford getting decent book covers or even getting someone to actually design book covers for them. A lot of authors, especially obviously indie authors, they go the Canva route and stuff like that. Now, traditional authors, unfortunately, it's not also completely in their hands. It's the publishing house that makes a lot of those decisions. So I hope that they would take heed, especially now with social media, knowing how people react when they see a beautiful cover. There's social media marketing, but for authors, it's the book cover. That is your marketing tool. That will definitely pull in someone to want to turn the book around and go, what is this about? And like you said, they have really upped the game in covers. I mean, there are book cover designers. I have one that's kind of like my dream person if I can ever work with them. And they are working now with traditional publishing because they got so popular. And so they make stunning covers.
Awesome.
So when it comes to covers, sidebar, not a fan of the illustrated trend that's going around. I'm not, for at least the romance aspect.
You want real people.
Yeah, the illustrated people, like, it's cute, and maybe for rom-coms it works. But I think other genres of romance, I don't feel it.
Especially the smexy ones.
Yeah, like it's got such a cutesy cover and you're like,
yeah, I get that. And it is very genre specific too. I will say that's interesting that you have your dream book cover artist because I think even 10 years ago, knowing the artist who illustrated covers was not a thing.
Nope.
I will say that I have picked up books just because of the way that the cover looks.
Same.
I don't always get them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I read the premise and I'm like, oh, it's not for me. Sometimes book covers have been deceiving and I thought it was a specific genre and it was not.
Yes.
So it all just depends. I do feel like publishing companies have kind of learned their lesson that they can't skimp out on the book covers. For indie authors, it's one thing, like you said, because it's an affordability issue.
Yes.
For traditionally published authors and their lack of control, especially if it's their debut novel, the publishing company, it's really about them just kind of like skimping a little bit, especially because this is a brand new author. They don't know how the book is going to do. Now it's packaging.
Yeah.
And as somebody who used to watch a lot of makeup tutorials back in the day when the beauty people in YouTube were big, packaging really matters. And it still does to a degree, but it's very appealing to people. It can make or break whether or not you get the product. I already had Fourth Wing. I didn't need to have a special edition. My husband was the one that found them. When he showed it to me, I was like, oh,
it's pretty.
Because I've been wanting to have prettier copies of books on my shelves. I'm not really a book snob in the way that I have to have everything coordinated and everything has to be beautiful. And I just like having books on my shelves, period.
Same.
So this is a rarity for me to have a special edition of something. And he knew that I really liked the first book. And so he was like, look, I found it. And I was like, okay, I mean, if you really want to get it for me, I'm not
pull my arm.
Exactly. Now, moving on to another one.
Yes.
One of my biggest, and we haven't discussed it yet. None of these points have we discussed with each other. So we're going to get our honest and real reaction to it now.
Yes.
This is something that I discovered back in the day when we were a part of that church organization in the Midwest that shall not be named.
No.
I was reading a lot of nonfiction at that time.
So, trying to
get all the insides correct, trying to be a better person, trying to learn more about God. No offense to anybody. This is just my personal journey. So there was a book that came highly recommended. And mind you, a lot of the authors of these books, they're publishing in-house. So these are not out there in Barnes and Noble or your local bookstore. These are like specific to your church organization a lot of the times. And if they are widely spread, they're widely spread mostly within either Christian bookstores or churches.
Yes.
It was fiction because there was a lot of heavenly storyline going on.
Okay.
I could not tell you what that book was about because I could not get through it. I couldn't even get through the first chapter. The amount of detail that this woman put in the most insignificant things. I may have mentioned this to you back then.
Maybe.
I don't expect you to remember.
No.
It was too much. It was far too much. I was like, I don't care. What we spent a whole chapter just describing the throne room of God. Can we get somewhere? Can we do something? And it's not just in that arena, because I remember my husband telling me about reading The Shining, which is a Stephen King novel, and saying how he was like a quarter of the way through the book and they hadn't even made it to the hotel yet. I was like, nope, sorry.
Yep.
I can't do it.
I was reading. Was it a romance book? I don't know if it was a romance book or if it was women's fiction. 6 pages, and we're still talking about the fucking foyer of the house.
No,
I can't.
There's no reason. Unless the house itself is a character in the book,
it wasn't.
There is no reason that you need to be that detailed.
I couldn't finish it. I didn't end up finishing the book. I was so turned off by how long the description of just stupid stuff that I was just like...
I love it. The passion. Yes. The anger behind there. Yeah, the thing too, on a more personal level, as far as like why I didn't like it, not only because it was kind of boring to me to be so overly descriptive about something that, yes, while it has significance, it's not the premise of the story. So why are we still here? But it's also that I felt like the author was spoon feeding me as a reader, and I didn't like that. I like to picture in my head. When I read a book, a movie is going on in my head.
Same.
I know that not everybody
Some
reads
people
books like that.
have Fantasia and they can't picture anything. So yeah.
I feel for all of you.
I know my heart goes out because for me, imagination is such a
Everything.
huge, it was a survival of my childhood. So I can imagine not being able to picture.
No, when I read a book, I need to picture it. This is why people are going to kill me for this. Because of our religious upbringing, I did not read the Harry Potter books when they came out because they were no good.
Yeah,
you
we
know?
weren't allowed to.
Exactly. Like my mom didn't prohibit me from doing it, but it was highly discouraged.
Yeah.
And so I stayed away from it. So I actually watched the movies, all of the movies. And when I went to go back and try to read the books, all I could see was fucking Daniel Radcliffe. And I was like, I can't. It's ruined for me. So now if there is a movie that comes out and I might be interested in reading the book, I will not watch the movie until I've read the book.
Same.
So I have not watched Wicked. For many reasons, not just. But I actually bought the book and I want to read the book. Maybe I'll get around to watching the movie. I have seen the stage production of Wicked, but it was so long ago. I barely remember.
Yes.
So I feel like I can read the book. Plus, I think that the stage show is.
I heard it's not the same.
Different. It's not the same. It's a little bit more.
It's darker.
From what I heard, the book is darker. Yes. So I'm very excited about that. But I need to be able to imagine it. So if you tell me every single little detail, then I cannot have my own version of it in my head because you have not left a single thing out. And that is so aggravating because for some readers, we want to picture it ourselves. Yes, we want a description, but I don't need to know every freckle on somebody's face. Please. It's too much.
And here's the thing, and this is the writer in me. I understand there are stylistic choices. There's people who love the long description, telling over showing. But for me...
It sounded like you're about to say shit. The long description shit.
The long descriptions, stuff. Art is art. I get it. And it's subjective. But I will say, as a writer, for me, taking the full description of her throne room, that was like a full chapter, I would have, as an editor, said, we can have all this information, but we need to spread it out. And we need to do it strategically where we don't feel like we're constantly info bombing the reader, and it actually ties into the character's reaction to a specific moment that brings up the specific detail. There's a way that you can bring in all of these details in a way that the flow and the pacing of the story still moves forward at a good pace. Because it's true, when you get those chunks of just description, it feels like the story goes on pause. Let's pause the video and now just look at the picture that's paused and look at all the details.
Yes, it very much is like that. And I think too, a little bit of reading so much YA kind of ruined me for the long exposition, because with YA, you get right into the crux of the story. The action is immediate. And I've noticed that I'm similar when it comes to movies. There are certain movies where I'm literally screaming at the screen, let's go! What? My God, this doesn't need to be 3 hours long. And then there are ones like the Lord of the Rings extended edition cuts that I'm like, okay, I can do this because this is a very rich fantasy world. I'm into it. I'm into the story. I feel like something is happening and I want to be aware of it. I want to go on this ride. Ooh, it has to be very specific. I will say that. It just has to be very specific for me to want to give so much of my time to either a book or a movie or something. Like you said, spread it out. Give me some action and then let's go back to the long exposition.
Another pet peeve that I will bring up. Oh, I already feel myself getting my
getting enraged.
Are starting to percolate.
It's okay. Take a breath.
Okay. I'm literally rubbing a stone in my hand right now. My anxiety. Okay. When an author does not warn you that the book you're about to read ends in a cliffhanger.
How would they warn you though?
Now see, here's the thing. And that's an interesting take because you mostly obviously buy physical books, whereas I mostly get ebooks. So I always have available the information and the description through where I'm getting the books. So at least all the ebooks I read have the description where at the bottom, the author the good ones, usually will tell you that this book ends in a cliffhanger, or this is book one in a trilogy, or something like that.
Oh, so you're not even aware that it's a part of a trilogy.
Yeah.
How do you not let people know that that's the case?
Well, because I mean, some authors don't put that stuff in the description. They're not detail oriented in that area. And honestly, they've become better at it because of the hate that they did get from very enraged readers. That I would say maybe 10 years ago, when they weren't putting that, there was a lot of anger and a lot of bad reviews, because they were like, I was into this, I invested in it, and then it ends in a cliffhanger and I didn't know. That is a huge pet peeve. If I would have known ahead of time, one, either wouldn't have read it, or two, I would have waited till the full series is out. Because it's not that I will never read a book that ends in a cliffhanger. It's the fact that I need to mentally prepare, because for me, I need all the books available. I am not going to wait a year for the resolution of a cliffhanger. I don't have the patience.
Sometimes longer.
Yeah.
Sometimes, girl, okay, so this is my only little contribution to this particular pet peeve. Children of Blood and Bone. It was like 3 years in between the second and third book. And don't get me wrong, I do not want an author to rush putting a book out there just because it's a popular series, because a lot of people, for example, with the Fourth Wing series, complained that Iron Flame was not as good, that it was flawed because of how quickly she had to put it out there, the pressure of it being so popular. I don't want that. No. I want you to take your time, tell a good story, make sure you get everything that you want out of it, make sure it's edited well, because lately the editing of books,
we can go
especially
into that,
traditionally published books,
which is wild to me.
You know what? Call me. I can proofread these bitches for you, because I am so sick of seeing errors in books that I'm like, why?
It had a team of like 5 editors of
and
different
how did
varieties.
This get past them? I feel like the editors were like, yeah, I read it. I read it. It's great.
Yeah.
By the second or third pass, they're not even reading the book anymore.
Exactly.
So I want authors to take their time.
Sometimes they have, family issues, health issues. We get that.
I totally get it.
Yes.
I learned my lesson with that series because I forgot so much of what happened in the story. So now I'm having to go back and sort of spark notes the entire 2 first books to be able to kind of remember. And it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Being in the heat of the moment. I will say a friend of mine told me specifically when Iron Flame came out, they were like, don't read it.
I heard a lot of people say that.
Until the third book comes out, because it's going to leave you in a point and you're going to want to have that third book. So that's why I waited. I waited specifically because of that recommendation, because I am the type of person that I'm like, if it's a really good cliffhanger, I was like, I need it now. I need it now. So I agree with you. I want to have the entire series, and I will be patient and I will wait for the entire series to come out so that I can read it back to back to back.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Even if I'm not pissed at the end of the cliffhanger, even if I end up being that reader who yes, I'm here for it, I loved it, I can't wait for the next one. You made a valid point. If it takes longer than a year, think about it. That excitement to get the next book isn't going to be there the way it was in the beginning, because you kind of forget even where you left off. You forget the story. So even though you're going, oh yeah, I wanted to read the next part, that excitement when you bought the first book or the second book, when you were, you were fully engaged in the characters and the plot, that's not there anymore. So the likelihood of people even rushing to immediately buy week of release that next book, it lowers the chances of that, because now you're kind of not as invested as you were, just because of time.
And I mean, this doesn't just go for books. I will say we have been waiting for the final season of Stranger Things for how long?
Oh my gosh.
And granted, I knew there was a writer's strike.
Yes.
There was a lot going on.
A long time ago.
And I was definitely on the side of the strikers.
Yes.
People deserved to get the wages that they earned.
Absolutely.
But holy shit. Because first of all, I thought that the 4th season was going to be the final season. And then to find out, oh no, there's going to be another one. And we're left at this huge cliffhanger, similar to what we were talking about in books. And now it's to the point where that excitement has waned. Yeah. I'll watch it.
Yeah.
When it comes out, but it's like you said, we're immersed in this world. We are ourselves as a reader a character in this book, in the sense that we're a spectator to this world.
Yes.
We're in it, we're in the emotions, we're in the excitement, we're in all of that. And then you get pulled out of that with the gaps of time, and then you have to build that back up again.
Yeah.
It's not like you get the book in your hand and page 1, boom, you're right back into it. No, it takes time depending on how long it's been since you've been away from these characters. And then you have to think about the books that you've read in between.
Yes.
Because it's not like you're putting that book down and you're going, okay, I'm not going to read anything for the next year until the third book comes out. It doesn't work that way. You've moved on to other worlds, to other characters.
New lovers.
Exactly. And so while I understand that there is a process, and I understand that things take time, I do think that if you're like this, it would probably be in your best interest to just wait.
Yes.
Just wait. I know it's hard. FOMO kicks in real hard. I still haven't read Iron Flame and Onyx Storm because I am in the process of reading the book that I just showed earlier, which is nonfiction. It's about religious trauma, which is another episode that we're going to be doing. And I want to be able to fully be immersed in this world. So I want to get this book done while, mind you, I'm also reading a book with my husband. That's a horror book about a teenage slasher. So I got a lot of things going on, which isn't bad. Like, I can read multiple books at once. Can you do that?
I can do that only if one is fiction and one is nonfiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can do it because what I'm reading right now with my husband is horror, and because Fourth Wing is fantasy, there's such different worlds that
And genres,
I can and genres that I can, but I can definitely see not being able to read 2 books of the same genre,
especially
because fantasy,
especially because I read faster, like I because I have no chill, so I
love that.
So for me, I'm like, if I was to read multiple at the same time, I feel like I'd start getting confused. And I do read a lot of similar genres, and it's happened to me in the past where I didn't fully finish one book, started another. And there was times where I thought a certain character did or said something, and it was later that I was like, wait, that wasn't the same book.
Yeah, you don't want to do that to yourself at all. For some reason, I guess because the genres are so different, I have been able to, because even my husband, he's reading the Silmarillion, which is sort of like the Bible of the Lord of the Rings world.
That's right. He did mention that. Yes.
So he's reading that while also reading this teenage slasher horror book together. And again, completely different worlds. And even Silmarillion is really different from the rest of the Lord of the Rings series because it really does read like a Bible. It's like heavy on this person did this and begot this person. Like
the begots.
The begots, yes. And he's been like itching to get to the part that is the history that you see in the show Rings of Power. And it's only like a teeny, like this much of the book. And he hasn't even gotten there yet. It's been funny watching him because he's like, God, this is so dense. And he was told, he was warned, this is not going to be like the other books because there's no plot. It's just history. That's all you're reading. Because I think it's so different, we're able to keep these sort of worlds separately. But I agree with you. I think that if I was reading books that had similar things going on, fantasy elements, it could be confusing.
Like little subconscious things kind of blipping into each other's world.
Yeah. You're like, who pushed who up against a wall and fucked him?
Exactly.
Was that in this book or was that in this other? What was it? What's the thing that they like to say? Whose eyes darkened and then who growled? You know? That's the thing that I see a lot of people making fun of.
And look, okay, make fun of the growl all you fucking want, but it is a thing. It is real. If you don't believe me, look up Henry Cavill doing Geralt. That man growled, and that is what every romance writer means when we put that in there.
She's mine.
Ooh.
Yes. That was such a perfect example. See, but I even get the whole eyes darkening thing.
I know, but
it's an expression thing. He gets not evil, but he gets kind of more serious, tense.
And sometimes it darkens from sexual pleasure.
Sometimes it's sexual, sometimes it's rage.
Yep.
It just depends on the situation, but I get what that's saying.
Thank you. Speaking of one of my pet peeves,
Wait, it's my
Oh,
turn.
sorry. No, you're right. It is your turn. I'm ready for the next one.
I heard that slam of whatever that was. No,
it was
I
a
get
perfect segue, but you're right. It's your turn. Go.
Okay. So I think as a person of color, it's difficult, and I'll tell you why. I think that is the way that our society works. I've been conditioned with characters being predominantly white. And it's so ingrained in my head that sometimes I'll even avoid characters of diversity because I'm so used to picturing white people in my head because that's been the predominant race or ethnicity that's been shown in a lot of books. And it's the default, right? Yeah. If you're reading a book, you assume the character is white unless specified otherwise. Just like you assume a character is straight unless specified otherwise. Yeah. To have a diverse character is something that I feel like as a writer, you unfortunately have to announce to the reader. Yeah. And this gets into my whole sensitivity reading thing and advice that I've given people, because if you imagine as you're reading, you're likely going to imagine a cisgendered, straight, white person. Yeah. As that character, unless you're told otherwise. So it's hard because growing up, I never really got to read a lot of books that had characters that were like us, that were of different ethnicities, skin tones, sexual orientations, gender identities, and even body differences.
Which was my things. I correlate on both areas of that, yeah.
So I love the fact that I'm seeing that more and more, but I have to admit, and it's really hard for me to admit because I feel like it's a bit of internalized biases or internalized prejudice because of being conditioned, is that sometimes I don't go immediately. I mean, not anymore. Now, if I see that it's a woman of color protagonist or if it's a queer, I am way more open to those stories than I used to be in the past. But I had to undo a lot of that thinking. And I had to go, wait, no, these stories are just as interesting and just as valuable. And it's fucked up that I've been so indoctrinated to think that those stories are not as good. Yeah. And they're not as interesting. And it's still an issue as far as lack of diversity, but it's starting to improve. This is what I say as a sensitivity reader when I'm reading writers' scripts and their novels, is that I want it to get to a point where we don't have to put those types of stories in their own lane. This is a queer story. This is a POC story. No, it's just a story. And these characters are just as important, just as interesting as any other character. Now, it's not a color blindness thing, and it's not a thing of, I don't see gender, I don't see color. Because the differences are important. They're what make us who we are. I hate characters that it's a black woman, but she's a white woman who happens to be black. You know what I'm saying? They wrote a white character, but they labeled her African American. Yeah. No. I'm talking about actual multidimensional, nuanced characters that are in touch with their culture, and you can see that through the story. It enriches us so much more to have diversity, to be able to read these stories and learn. I mean, it's why they're banning books that discuss race, that discuss gender identity, that discuss sexuality. Because when you read these stories and you realize that these are real people, you start to grow empathy and understanding for them. Yeah. And that's dangerous to a lot of people. So I would like to see more diversity, body diversity. And I know that you have stuff to say about that.
I mean, obviously, as someone who grew up with her weight fluctuating a lot due to PCOS, it was one of those things that, especially earlier on, like you said, they're changing now, but earlier on growing up, it was non-existent, because it's better now, but it was non-existent growing up, ever seeing a curvy woman being the lead of anything. She was always the funny fat friend. That is very much, even in theater, which I was in theater, I was even encouraged by my old drama teacher who was teaching university, and I was going back into the auditioning cycle in my mid-20s. He was basically telling me, like, pre-prepared, because you won't be considered the ingenue lead character. These are the roles they're going to put you in. So you have to audition pieces from actual plus size women who usually are not the lead unless it was a very toxic play, a short play, literally called Fat Pig. And I read it, and the girl had the worst toxic relationship with the male lead. She basically had no backbone or self-worth and bent over backwards to make him love her. It was depressing.
Disgusting.
It was the thing that honestly, after I read that, I was discouraged and I didn't continue auditioning because I was like, if this is what I have to stoop down to, just because it so happens this is my body type, not because of talent, not because of what I can deliver in a drama scene. No.
Yeah.
So growing up, seeing eventually curvy women being the lead in books specifically is where I mostly saw it starting to happen, not so much TV and movies. They tried occasionally, but it still ended up being slightly satirical or caricature of the character, like Hairspray.
And the fact that their weight is part of the storyline.
Yes.
Which doesn't need to happen.
Exactly. Instead of they're just a person.
A person, yes.
Who's going through life experiences like anyone else. Who's finding love like anyone else. Though that wasn't allowed to just be. Like you had to make it about her weight. And same thing with people of color. Like you said.
The token.
There was the other, because there's the ones who just kind of wrote a white character that so happened to be black. Or you got the other extreme where it was so stereotyped and poorly done without proper research of culture and experiences that it was like, oh no.
I get stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason.
Yes.
But we don't all fit in those boxes. Nor should we. I mean, call me crazy, but I think that books and movies should reflect how the fucking real world works. So the fact that your average size, at least here in the United States, is a size 16, that is not reflected in media. No. It's not reflected in the books we read, in the movies that we watch. When you're just walking down the street, you're not seeing fucking supermodels walking their dogs next to you. You're just seeing average bodies existing in all different shapes and sizes and colors. And yet this is not being reflected in what we consume media-wise. It's insane to me.
Well, because unfortunately, our society is still struggling with racism and fat phobia. People don't want to look too closely. They don't want to be presented with the reality that they are still struggling to accept in people.
And what's crazy is that some of the people that perpetuate that are the very people who are in that situation. Like me, as a person of color, I should have been craving and wanting to see people that look like me in books and movies. And I did to a degree, but I think that I also believed the lie that the better stories were the stories featuring white characters. You might be plus size and you might not want to see a plus size girl having a love story. It's a lot of internalized discrimination that we have just been inundated with in our society and have come to believe in a certain way, which ends up turning into self-hatred. There's a whole mental health thing that goes along with that. Yeah. I think the more that we give ourselves to those types of stories, the more empathy we'll even have for ourselves. And the fact that my story matters. Who I am as a person, people would want to know about that and see that reflected in books because it's how the world actually is. So lately I've been getting a lot more stories that feature characters of color or queer characters. And I have really come to enjoy it. But I mean, let's be honest. A series like any of the authors that we've mentioned, Sarah J. Maas, Rebecca Yarros, I don't really see a lot of characters of color in these books. No, they're mostly white characters.
One of my favorite romantic suspense authors who's really up and coming right now, like a lot of attention in the last year, I have noticed that I felt like most of the books I read, her characters were always these blonde, blue-eyed little nature girls with the cute dresses. And I literally have read like 20 of her books so far. And not all the time. Sometimes she'll have a brunette or a redhead. But other than that, they are all white.
Groundbreaking.
And she's a white, long, blonde-haired woman. Yeah. So it was interesting because I didn't realize until it hit me one day. I was reading a new book that had come out of hers. And I was like, again? Another blonde girl? Yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
And then people get mad at authors of color for writing characters of color, for making their main protagonist a character of color. But I'm like, you're not going around telling the white authors that they need to diversify their characters more. I mean, yes, as readers, we might say that, but obviously their publishing companies or whoever's putting their content out there are not complaining.
Mm-hmm.
They found their audience, obviously. And I get that. You're writing your experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of people say, hey, I don't necessarily feel comfortable making my main character a person of color because it's not my experience. I don't know anything about that. I get that. But you can educate yourself.
Yes.
You can educate yourself, and one, it's your job.
Mm-hmm.
It's your job.
Just like you research other plot point aspects to your story, there's no excuse.
If your story takes place in Paris, France, and you've never been there, you're going to research the shit out of Paris, France. You're going to scout locations, real locations to put your characters in. You're going to learn about the culture so that you can write it accurately. How could you not do the same thing for characters who might be of a different race or ethnicity? I understand the fear and trembling that comes with wanting to write a character correctly, but especially if you're a traditionally published author with a long career, like you said, you've read 20 of her books. She could easily hire a sensitivity reader to read her content and tell her what needs to be fixed. And she just chooses not to.
And here's the thing, not every single Black person are all the same. Like every white person is not the same. So you don't have to go to extremes to add a person of color. There are people who are Asian American. They're obviously Black Americans. So they're not going to have vastly different speech or experiences, but there is a cultural aspect that will bleed into the everyday norms that may not look the same as just a Caucasian person. But it's not like you're not going to know how to write a love story between a Black woman and a white or Hispanic guy or another Black guy. Like, these things are not impossible. And I will say, because like you, I didn't realize the internal, just like we all had to struggle with our internal misogyny, we had our own internal racism that we didn't know we had to deal with. And it was the same thing. Like, I would only gravitate towards the default white main characters and all these different things. And what I've been very grateful for is that since I have started writing under the pen name with my co-author, my co-author is a beautiful Black woman. And she has really challenged me to switch up who we put into our books as main characters. We've written so many interracial relationships now, and it's been really rewarding and fun. One of our first books, we had a Filipino American. I had to do research, and the research was fun. And again, it wasn't like I was writing a completely foreign character. I was writing an American woman who just so happens to have a Filipino background because that is her culture and ethnicity. And so the same thing, like right now, we're currently writing a Chinese American woman and an American man who has a Nordic ancestry. It's actually fun when you get to dive into research different cultures to bring some more 3D diversity to your characters. It's not impossible to do. And again, as long as you do your due diligence the way you do about your settings, the way you do if you write, and this person I was talking about, they write suspense, meaning they have to research the police stuff, the crime scene stuff. They do research for that. There's no difference in adding research for your main character.
There really isn't any difference. And you're right. I mean, unless you are writing a character who was born in their country of origin and that's where the story takes place, you can still do it. It's going to require more research, and it may even require you to get some input from somebody from that culture.
Exactly.
But it's not impossible, and it's really annoying to me when people take the easy route, not just in the writing, it's like lazy writing, or they just take the easy route and they don't even touch it at all because it's not their experience, or they don't want to take the time to, because like you said, we are Puerto Rican, but we're also Hispanic American. We're very Americanized. We grew up in this culture. So yes, when you come to our house, we might have rice and beans instead of steak and mashed potatoes.
Exactly.
We might do a kiss on the cheek as opposed to a handshake. We might play some reggaeton or salsa music every once in a while, in addition to like the Taylor Swift. But that's really like some of the biggest differences right there. They might speak a little Spanglish in addition to speaking regular English. It's not hard. That's the thing. It's like, it's not fucking hard. And you don't have to make them stereotypical. Like a character who's listening to mariachi music all the time and wears a sombrero and a poncho or whatever. And granted, people do actually exist that way.
Yeah.
But like you said, no one person fits all the stereotypes. You know what I would love to see? And this is something that Nick and I have talked about quite a bit. I would love to see a person of color, Black protagonist who is a full-on nerd. Like, loves anime, loves reading books, loves going to Comic-Con, loves doing all of that.
My Filipino girl, that was her. She was a full-on nerd, talked about Firefly, talked about Comic-Con, and he was just a bookish librarian white dude. It was great.
I would love to see that because it exists in the world.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's a group of people that is underrepresented in the media, along with lots of other types of people. And it's endless, the differences that we can showcase. And it just makes it more interesting. Like, how many more books are you going to read of hers with blonde protagonists where you're like, okay, this is the same story over and again, or the personality is exactly the same.
That does happen a lot too. It's one of those things that I'm like, imagine just the same white character over and over and over. Think of all the possibilities if you diversified and then, like you said, played with even the stereotypes. Instead of just writing the same Black characters over and over and over, make a Black nerd who loves her nerdy shit and is proud and doesn't shy away from chatting about all the fun nerdy things and going to Comic-Con and making her costume and all her cosplay outfit.
Her
and
cosplay.
Yes! Like,
these
honestly.
people exist.
And the fact that these are the things we're asking for to be little tiny sprinkles in the market is sad.
Yes.
And because they're so lacking right now.
Yeah, because we're oversaturated with the same type of person. It's like when we were a part of that church organization in the Midwest, all the girls there were exactly the fucking same.
The same white indie girl.
UGG wearing indie girls who wanted to sing like Billie Eilish, but anyways.
Yeah, we can get
into it because
there was
we
one
were
character.
Very different.
Yes, very much so. It was hilarious because if you knew me and you lived where I lived, compared to all the common women you would find here, I am not what you would typically call like a high maintenance city girl. I am high maintenance. I have my things. But the stereotype of your high maintenance city girl who shops and does her nails and does all these things, I'm like, that's not me. But when I was in this rural Midwest town, it's like they looked at me, and because there was one type they knew, it was like, oh my God, you're like this high fashion city girl and all these things. And I was just like, no.
Or the worst, when they would call you exotic.
Exotic Mexican, because they didn't know any other Hispanic culture but Mexican, and that was the only food of Hispanic nature they had available.
I hated being the spokesperson for Hispanic people.
Oh my God.
During my time there, I was like, I don't want to answer any more questions. I don't know how to make tamales. I'm not Mexican.
And I'm not going to speak Spanish to you.
Yes. What? You're like a freaking performing monkey or something.
Exactly.
Speak Spanish. Anyway. So as we're wrapping up, I have to give you your moment for the thing that you slammed the desk for. Tell me. I feel like I know what it is. It's about romance, isn't it?
Yes. But I've cooled off, and I'm not gonna.
No, get enraged again.
No, I'm not gonna linger. I will say that sadly, one of my biggest pet peeves, especially now that I've become a writer as well, who has self-published under the genre, is the stigma that is still plaguing romance books and romance writers. It was actually very interesting because I was on Threads the other day, and there was sadly, I think she's a book reviewer. She is also an author writing, I think, her debut romantasy. And she actually got interviewed by a pretty large, well-known company. in the interview with the interviewer, they had discussed how she was going to talk about all the empowering things about women writing romance and all the intricate plots and experiences they get to have and bring to their characters. And so she thought this article was going to be one way. And next thing she knew, when it got published, it had a horrible title, basically calling people who read romance horny ladies. That's literally what they called. Yes. She was enraged because she's like, they turned the entire thing around and made it about, oh my God, from Bridgerton to this, romance is on the rise for all of our horny ladies, something like that. And the comments under it, people are just so, and authors and readers were disgusted and appalled because, again, someone made a good point. They're like, it's interesting because you call anything women write in romance smutty. You call it fairy smut because a lot of people who are writing fantasy and stuff, they're like fairy smut.
Fairies, yeah.
So they're like, you call it fairy smut, but yet no one is calling J.R. Martin's stuff dragon smut.
George R.R. Martin.
Thank you. Sorry. I don't even read him. I don't care. But George R.R. Martin, he writes a bunch of sex on the page.
And he includes incest.
Exactly. But no one's calling his stuff dragon smut. So because he's a male in the industry and because he's not under the genre of romance, he doesn't get ridiculed for putting sex on the page. But anyone who writes romance, which it's not about sex on the page, which people still don't get, even the books with sex on the page in romance, that's not what it's about. There's a plot, there's story, there are characters, there's a journey.
It's true. I will say in regards to that, I think books like 50 Shades of Grey have kind of done a disservice a little bit to the romance genre just because the plot in that story was so basic bitch. It was so minimal. It was so underdeveloped. That it really did become more about the sex than it really was about the journey of, let me finish. This journey of him and his background and his childhood and his trauma. I felt like that kind of took a back seat. Not to mention, I understand it was fanfic. A lot of people said it was not very well written, but it was obviously very popular. I do think that, unfortunately, when a man writes those things and he adds sex in it, people look at the sex as being secondary to the storyline. When a woman does it, they look at the sex as being primary to the storyline, and whatever the other plot points are secondary, unfortunately. And that's not on the author at all. It's just how, unfortunately, women are treated versus how men are treated. That double standard, it exists in so many areas in our society. Yes. It's shitty, and I understand because I wrote an article for a publication that's no longer around, XO Jane, and they had a habit of doing that shit. They would take your article, they would edit it in a way to leave out certain points, specifically so that readers would attack the writer of those articles. And I got attacked. Hundreds of comments talking about, oh, she didn't have a backbone and da-da-da-da, because they purposely left out certain aspects of the story to make it seem like it went one way instead of how it actually happened. And now I feel like that is something that is very common. Publications don't care anymore about being accurate. They just care about sensationalism.
Yeah.
Yes. They want people to get angry because anger means comments, means engagement.
Yep.
And unfortunately, they're going to try to get that however they can, even if it means fucking the writer over, even if it means changing the entire purpose of the article. I am unfortunately not surprised that this happened to her.
True. Now, speaking more on the stigma against the romance genre, to your point, let's take 50 Shades of Grey. One, people also don't understand the variations of the genre. 50 Shades was not a romance, it was an erotic romance. So erotic romance and erotica, two separate subgenres, very much focus on the sex being, especially in erotic romance, sex is very much highlighted with still a romantic plot, hence it's erotic romance. And then you have straight erotica, which very much can say plot out the window, really it's just about sex on the page. And then you have romance with all of its variations of spice, if it has spice, because there is clean romance as well. I totally get that there almost became a satirical nature to romance after 50 Shades, but at the same time, one, it was entertainment because really 50 Shades and Twilight, which funny enough, that's where the fan fiction was created, were treated the same way, but completely different genres. We're made fun of in the same way. But at the end of the day, entertainment is entertainment. Art is subjective. People will latch onto whatever they latch onto.
Yeah.
Two, I will say that one thing that I do applaud 50 Shades sensation for is that it freed a lot of women to embrace their sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And it freed authors to also embrace writing more about the sexual experience from the point of view of a woman, which men were not doing well. And then also, in addition to all that, it created now where we weren't hiding away and more authors started writing proudly sex on the page in their romance, which is still a journey in and of itself. It's not just about the sex. It's like any other relationship where a lot of the time sex will change or evolve a relationship. And that is all authors are doing, is they're showing you the real nature of two people coming together and their experience growing. And part of that experience naturally is intimacy and sex. So it was one of those things, even on a personal level, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, is that if it weren't for that era, I would have stayed sexually repressed to a very sad and unhealthy level because I needed that freedom that I wasn't getting verbally or even just within society because of growing up religious and having that trauma. And so I'm grateful that that era actually freed me because suddenly authors were writing more sex on the page and doing it without us feeling like we had to hide. We were able to talk more freely about it suddenly.
That's a huge thing. I do agree. I feel like since 50 Shades came out and was such a sensation, it revived the genre in a way that people were more open to talk about it publicly. All of a sudden, people who were reading romance, especially romance with spice, they were taking a lot of the words that were used against them and they were like, yeah, I am a smut queen and what? And I love that because we see that a lot in different minority groups where they'll take a word that's meant to be derogatory and they'll turn it around and they themselves will use it and they will use it proudly. And I feel like the romance community were like, yeah, we're smutty, whatever. You and I went to a bookstore here in Colorado called the Spicy Librarians, and they even had a little hidden room with vibrators, handcuffs, and all sorts of shit.
All sorts of stuff.
Very proudly. Obviously, you had to be 18 enough to go into that room, but like... It's more out in the open now, which is great because I feel like it is women taking their power back, taking their sexuality back in a way that we haven't seen. Because unfortunately, even before 50 Shades of Grey, romance has always been stigmatized. In the days of like Fabio being the cover model.
Harlequin novels.
Harlequin romances. Yes. Those were all like...
Mommy's porn.
Yeah, mommy porn, or my housewife in the 1950s reads that kind of stuff. And it was never taken seriously simply because it wasn't catering to men. It was catering to women. And God forbid women have their own thing. God forbid that it's not about the male perspective, but it's about the female perspective.
Or God forbid women actually learn what their bodies can do and experience and suddenly want it and demand it.
Yeah. Suddenly they're like, oh, I can have an orgasm. Somebody can figure out where the clit is.
Someone should try to figure out where the clit is.
Yeah, somebody should care about my pleasure too. And it's so funny because you said earlier, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to be like, the fact that women were writing from the female perspective because men don't really do that well. And I was going to be like, what? They don't do that well? You mean to tell me that a woman doesn't have to wear a pad when she gets wet from sexual arousal because she's just gushing so much that she has to wear an entire menstrual pad?
Literally read that from a man.
I know.
Oh my God. They had sent it to someone I had been friends with who's an author for critique. And she was reading it to us, and I was like...
she critiqued the shit out of that.
This boy just watches anime hentai because he thinks a woman is literally filling up, not a panty liner, a pad, because her arousal is so gushing. I was like, oh, sweet baby Jesus.
This is clearly either men who have never truly sexually pleased a woman, or two have never had sex with a woman at all.
Yep.
And are attempting to write this based on what they've seen in pornography or what they've seen in, like you say, the Japanese hentai.
Yeah.
Which is I don't even.
We don't even know. Not yucking anyone's yum. Just saying personally, not our thing.
Personally, we don't really want to talk about it. But anyway, this has been really, really fun. We didn't get to touch on every single point that we wanted to.
Did touch a lot.
But we did. I think in the future, we'll switch gears a little bit and talk about the more positive things that we really, really love in our books, regardless of what the genre is. And then maybe in the distant future, there'll be a Pet Peeves Part 3.
Stay tuned to find out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please, friends, make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and go into the comments. Why, Heather? What can we talk about in the comments today?
We want to start a conversation, as always. We did talk a little bit about it in the first episode with the Pet Peeves Part 1 of what are your pet peeves? What are the things that you don't like to see in books? If there's anything that we talked about in this episode that you relate to, please let us know about it. We have had some engagement, especially on some of the TikTok videos that have talked about the After series or the Divergent series. It is so much fun listening to your guys' opinions.
Sorry, we got the character name wrong.
Yeah, we said Holden and his name was
Harden.
I already forgot. Harden.
I think.
Yes, no, you're correct.
Okay.
It is Harden. Someone even mentioned that they like toxic relationships, and I challenged them to give us a good story, a good novel that featured a toxic relationship, since she didn't really like the After series either. So let us know what your pet peeves are. Let us know what you agreed and disagreed with in this episode as far as our pet peeves go. And if you have any suggestions that fit into those categories, definitely let us know.
All right, friends. So again, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, do all the things. We're on social media. You can find us on Threads, Instagram, TikTok. By all means, if you're watching us on YouTube, guys, if you could please subscribe and like the video, comment, even, you know what? If you're not a chatter, comment a book emoji. Just let us know you're there. If you are listening to us within any of the podcast platforms, if you could please leave us a review. Guys, that would help us so much with the algorithm so that others who like our content, like you, will find us. So this has been so much fun. I loved recording these 2 episodes.
It really has.
So we have more fun stuff to come, and we will see you guys very soon. Bye.
Bye.